Spartans! Prepare for glory!
I'm sorry, folks. I have to close early. Everybody out!
He's back.
He's back!
Hello there. It is a strange day with potentially very cool news. Oh, hang on. I'm being attacked by a dog. I'm helping dog sit my sister's pet. This news comes courtesy of Variety. 300 TV series in early development at Warner Brothers Television, exclusive by Joe Otterson, who I've been informed is not an Animal Crossing villager. I have not read this. Let's get into it. A 300 television series adaptation is in early developments at Warner Brothers Television. Variety has learned from sources. Exact plot details are still being worked out, but sources say that the show would serve as a prequel to the 2006 film. No writer or platform is currently attached to the project. That's an interesting point to make because some Warner Brothers stuff, like Sandman, is on Netflix. In fact, they just put all the Matrix movies on there. They had the Batman on there about a month or so ago. All of the DC animated stuff is on Netflix now. So this could be Netflix, it could be Amazon. You don't know, but interesting. Deals are still being negotiated, but Zack Snyder, who directed and co-wrote 300, I didn't know he co-wrote that. Cool. Is in talks to direct and executive produce this series. Whoa. Big if true. For a long time, I've said that Zack Snyder probably wasn't done with comic book movies, but I didn't foresee him making any sort of return to Warner Brothers, at least not until there was some type of sale, right? Like if DC was bought by Apple or Sony after Warner Brothers is diced up in a few years. I figured, yeah, they might ask Zack to come back. If Universal got their hands on it, maybe. The fact that I mean, I have opinions on this. I'm going to read a little bit more, but I have an opinion about what this could mean based entirely on theory and not on fact. So don't take it as a scoop, take it as an informed estimation. Deborah Snyder, who executive produced 300, oh, good for her, would also return as an executive producer under her and Zach's Stone Quarry production banner, with Stone Quarry's Wesley Collar also on board. Gianni Nunari, Mark Canton, and Bernie Goldman, all of whom were producers of the original film, are likewise in talks to return. Reps for Warner Brothers Television declined to comment. Okay, so pause right here. In my mind, right, I've seen people say that it's not impossible for Warner Brothers to lease the Zack Snyder iteration of DC to another platform or to develop it, you know, themselves. You could even see something like they do with the MonsterVerse movies, where Legendary foots the bill for a lot of it. It means they split the reward, but it also means that as a production house, Warner Brothers is able to produce more shows and movies and such. So there could be despite the financial troubles at Warner Brothers, if they're trying to do this, there could be something where they partner up with another production company and they split the costs. The CW did that with Riverdale, actually, at least for the first season or so. I remember. I don't know how that works, but the CW also did that with HBO Max when it was called HBO Max for Superman and Lois, which is why the production budget looks so much better. And then the article on Variety goes on to clarify 300 was based on the graphic novel by the same name by Frank Miller and Lynn Varley, which was itself loosely based on the real historical events in addition to taking inspiration from the 1962 movie The 300 Spartans. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on, it was a very successful movie, had tons of great actors, made lots of money, became very important. Follow-up film, 300 Rise of an Empire. I really enjoyed that movie. I know that there are some Zack Snyder diehards who don't swear by it because I don't even know if Zack produced anything on that. I thought it was cool. I thought that the story was cool. I thought the action was great. And Eva Green, I mean, talk about a great villain. And more Xerxes, that was cool too. The follow-up film, 300 Rise of an Empire, was released in 2014. The film was also based on Miller's graphic novel Xerxes, with Snyder again co-writing the screenplay, but not directing. Oh, so he did. Good for him. Multiple original cast members return, including Hetty, Santoro, Sullivan, Stapleton playing the lead role of Themistocles, was less well received than the original, but still grossed $337 million worldwide on a $110 million budget. So less than the original, but hey. Should the series move forward, it will be the latest in a long line of films being adapted for television, as the push for recognizable IPs in the streaming world remains strong. Amazon, for example, recently ordered a Legally Blonde prequel series. Really? About the high school years of Elle Woods. I mean, Reese Witherspoon does have like a clone for a child, so yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Smith TV series earlier this year. Apple, meanwhile, is prepping a Time Bandit series. That's fun. While other recent examples include a series based on movies like Fatal Attraction, Sexy Beast, and Dead Ringers. Yeah, 300 sounds better than those options. That is weird. Anyway, this ties into the running plan that seems like Warner Brothers is really gaming for. I think Zaslav knows that Warner Brothers' time is nigh. So they're doing their best to get as many Warner Brothers things in development so that whoever is trying to buy it sees that they're buying active franchises, meaning that there's been talks of rebooting or doing prequel spin-off sequels for the Harry Potter movies. DC's in the middle of a quasi reboot that's keeping some characters and ideas and not others, that for no real apparent in-universe explanation. They're trying to do more Matrix movies with or without the Wachowskis. So it feels like Warner Brothers is really trying to get as many embers in the fire so that whoever's buying doesn't just see a mountain of debt. They potentially see, okay, here's the debt, but here's how quickly we could potentially leverage these intellectual properties into profit. I don't know if that'll work out, but it looks like what they're trying to do. Like they're still doing House of the Dragon and so on. I'm actually surprised that no one mentioned Stephen DeKnight, who made Spartacus, or Sam or Ted Raimi, who executive produced Spartacus, which was always like a 300 TV show in all but name. I mean, stylistically, it was just 300. So the fact that they're name dropping Zack Snyder is interesting because it, to me, sounds like with all these other names that they're saying, all these producers are back. Zack would either be writing and producing, or writing and producing and directing, which would be fascinating because this would be Zack Snyder at Warner Brothers doing a comic book adaptation. So it's interesting that he could be returning to this thing that made him so famous, even though, the nerd media likes to kind of pretend that he wasn't a big hit. But 300 was a hit with like athletes, which I think is kind of something that early on put Zach at odds with the typical nerd crowd that so eagerly embraced Joss Whedon, was that he was appealing to, like, the 300 soundtrack played in my high school gym. My entire football team had Leonidas as like very poor quality crunched gifs of 300 as their slider phone lock screens and home screens on like their LG Tritons and all those other slider phones. It didn't help them. They didn't win a single, not even homecoming. They didn't win a single football game. Our team sucked. Uh, but they all had matching, home screens, which was cute. So it's interesting that he's coming back, that he's doing a comic book movie, and potentially, big potentially, because I think it also says something else. People have said, oh, well, Rebel Moon's part 1 and 2, the PG-13 universe, they were negatively reviewed by critics, but they had huge numbers on streaming. And the comic books have done like third reprints and stuff. And the book novelization for part 1 is available in a bunch of countries. Part 2 is launching in a week at the time of recording. So that's pretty cool. The album has done well, the Songs of Rebellion. The action figures have been selling well. The merch has been selling well. So he's moving money for Netflix. He's making it happen. And there's a whole conversation to be had for another video about how streaming has pissed off critics because it directly hands you, the viewer, control of what you watch, and you don't have to check with a website before driving to a movie theater and paying money to sit in a dark room. And I say that as a movie theater junkie. Going to the movies is magic for me. But streaming has made it where you can make your own choice on a whim, and there's really no stakes to it because you can close out or come back to it at any point in your life. So it's interesting to see that those popular narratives, oh, he's washed, Zack Snyder will never touch superheroes or comic books again. Warner Brothers hates him. Nobody in Hollywood likes him. That's clearly not true, and we've been saying it's not true, and that it's just nerd hyperbole, which is a lot of what social media is because nerds are the ones online. This is definitive proof that Warner Brothers sees him as a household draw, that they see what he does as a draw. And unlike the Watchmen series for HBO, which was a continuation of the comic and in no way attached to the movie, this is directly attached to the movie, meaning that they know that that is the most successful and popular version of that story, which is, I mean, pretty clear and obvious and cool. And I think it'd be cool to see the Persian side of 300 or to see, what happens to Wingham's character, Faramir. Faramir. Lord of the Rings slip up. My mistake. What happens to Dilios after the war to avenge Leonidas? What happens when his Spartan ways give way to real democracy? How does he react to that? Does he accept the democracy, or did he watch his fellow soldiers die for an idea that he doesn't even believe in, and he sort of has conflict with that? It's such a fascinating world with an interesting visual style. I think it's just cool that there's more of it. I enjoyed Spartacus. I enjoyed both the 300 movies. I think this is nifty, and I think it's interesting news and not anything that I expected to read today. I was already thinking about doing a here's some positive news roundup to kind of balance out the negative news I'm always having to cover. And I still plan to do that, and I have some really cool stories that I'm going to do in the future. But this was just like a fun, cool news story that came out like an hour or so ago. I caught it and I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's talk about that. That's cool. That's interesting. And even if Zach only like executive produces or has some story ideas that someone else writes, I mean, he's doing Twilight of the Gods, Rebel Moon, Planet of the Dead, and this. And what's interesting is that the rights to 300 aren't necessarily owned by Warner Brothers anymore. They lapsed in 2019, so Zach could do a 300 without them. And he always wanted to do an Alexander the Great movie in the style of 300. So I wonder if that's the reason that they're like, well, we lost the rights to the 300 comic, but we have the rights to the 300 movie, so we can do the movie universe, sort of like how Star Trek movie and TV, it's supposed to be the same thing, but it's legally distinct, which became kind of a conflict between CBS and Paramount, which is a very messy story that I don't really have time to go into at the tail end of this one. But it makes me wonder if that's some of the motivation of like, we don't have access to that comic, but we have access to the movie. As much as we hate to admit it, in the nerd side of things with DC, those Snyder fans do show up. Let's just get Zack back to do this, slap his name on some stuff, and make some money. You know, i- is it pandering for them to bring Zack back for a cool stylized action series set in Greece, really getting back to the foundation of his like movie career blowing up? Yeah, but I'm the one being pandered to, so I don't care. Will I support it? Yeah, because Warner Brothers is screwed either way. So I don't have to boycott or anything. Like, I haven't been boycotting Warner Brothers stuff. They just haven't made things that I thought were interesting, which is more pathetic in my opinion. So tell me what you think down below. Should Zach come back? Should he say, no, sorry, you had your chance? Do you think this is going to be on HBO Max? Do you think it's going to be on Amazon streaming service with Prime? Do you think it's going to be on Netflix? Will it be maybe like a TV and streaming thing? What do you think? Should he direct? What's going on? And I think importantly for me, I hope this doesn't mean he's going to delay more Planet of the Dead with Ella Parnell or Rebel Moon sequels and spinoffs. And if he is going to focus on this for a while instead, I hope he hands those off to other people so that we can get like a David Ayer's Planet of the Dead, a James Wan's Rebel Moon Part 3 or 4 or 5, whatever they're on by the time this materializes. I don't want to give up these original franchises to return to one that I know, even if it's one that I know and love. So let me know how you feel on that. Would you trade his new Netflix intellectual properties for more 300? How does that trade work out in your mind? I'm curious to get your feedback on that because, I mean, ultimately, Warner Brothers has never listened to us anyway, so they won't start now. But we can talk to each other and be friendly and have a good time anyway, because, I mean, that's why we're here, right? So, thanks for watching. Have a great day. And tonight we dine in the shade, boys. Till Tonight we dine in the shade.